This podcast is brought to you by Versed. Guys wear that guys wear. This fantasy football draft season, Verse Limitless Pants should be at the top of every guy's watch list. Because while some guys are sweating whether to risk it all on an up-and-coming rookie, fall back on a trusted vet, or to just ride with whatever the auto draft tosses at them, gearing up with the Limitless Collection's versatility, comfort, and style is always a sure thing. Versed. Guys wear that guys wear. Only at Dick's.
Every mile matters, whether you're driving your dream car or your daily commuter. The Mobil 1 team knows that. It's why we created Mobil 1 Advanced Clean Motor Oil. It cleans your engine in one oil change and helps extend engine life, delivering performance, protection, and cleanliness for vehicles of all ages. All to help keep your engine running like new, whatever you're driving. Visit mobil1.com/advancedclean to learn more.
Hello, difference makers. You are listening to A World of Difference. This is a podcast for the people who still believe that how we lead matters, that the conversations we have across difference, across cultures, across the distance between where we are and where the world needs to go can actually change things. I am Lori Adams Brown, and for over 5 years, I have been bringing global leaders, authors, and change makers to one table. 155,000 downloads, 800 countries, a top 3% podcast, and one conviction that has not changed. The right conversation at the right time with the right people shifts everything. If you are here, you are already a difference maker. And if you want to go deeper, the Difference Makers community is waiting for you at patreon.com/aworldofdifference. $7 a month, the price of a latte, bonus conversations, voting power, and a seat at the table where this conversation continues. The link is in the show notes. And welcome to this week's episode. I hope it inspires you. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Lori Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. What if the very systems designed to help people are the same ones keeping the right people out? Today's guest has spent her career at the intersection of mental health access and workplace equity. And she's not just talking about the problem. She's building the solution from the ground up. Janelle Miller Moravek is the Executive Director of Youth and Family Counseling, YFC, a nonprofit community mental health center dedicated to making mental health care accessible to everyone, regardless of their income, background, or zip code, even though she's working near Chicago. Under her leadership, YFC is doing something that too few organizations have the courage to prioritize: building a behavioral health workforce that actually looks like the communities it serves. This conversation is going to challenge the way you think about different perspectives in healthcare, not as a checkbox and not as a PR strategy, but as a matter of life and death access for the people who need care most. Whether you work in healthcare, lead a nonprofit, or you're simply someone who believes that representation saves lives, this episode is for you. Let's welcome Janelle to A World of Difference. Janelle Miller Moravek, welcome to A World of Difference.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm happy you're here. I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better and the great work that you're doing and why it's so important to do what you're doing right now and maybe some of the stories that kind of led you to where you are. But in the beginning, I just want to start kind of there. I guess my question is, tell me how we got to this place that some of us are aware of, where we simply don't have the representation we need in the United States, in particular, in our behavioral health workforce. How did we get here?
That's such a great place for us to start. And it's been, for me, a journey of, as a leader of a behavioral health clinic, of getting to this space of fully understanding, because I myself am not a clinician. And so I came up in fundraising. In our world, behavioral health care is not, that system is not like the physical healthcare system. It's different. There's not those big systems. It's mostly fee-based in the outpatient world. And for decades, those reimbursement fees have been really low. And so kind of like if you don't pay people enough, no one wants to be it when they grow up. So we've already have a shortage. And then add to that, it's really expensive to become a therapist. Listen, you have to go to college. Then you have to go to grad school for 2 years, 2 or 3 years typically. Then in there, you're taking an unpaid internship at a nonprofit, typically, because these were the teaching organizations in the field. Who can afford to go to graduate school and not work? Not many people. So when you look at the traditional makeup of the behavioral health outpatient counselors, we're second earners. We tend to have someone else that provides our health insurance, someone else who raises most of the money that the family needs. It's not us. And so that has set us up for this workforce that doesn't reflect our communities and what they look like today. And so when you take what we know today about how important it is in that therapeutic relationship to have a workforce and to have people who are sitting there with the experiences of the people they're serving, we know we get better care. It's just there's an inherent trust. There's an inherent understanding. We can talk. We just wrapped up a 2-hour training with my team on, cultural humility and unconscious bias. But you still, when you talk about the things that we talk about in counseling, you want to trust that person. And a lot of times, especially for those populations that have been historically marginalized and left out of the system, they want to see someone who gets them, who looks like them, sounds like them. So it's really important that we change the face of our behavioral healthcare system. That was a long answer.
No, actually it wasn't. It was a good overview because there's so much to unpack within it, to be fair. We could go a lot of different angles, but I mean, I think just the kind of where you started part of it of, the United States, we have such expensive education, once you get out of public high school. We don't have a lot of free education, even at the bachelor's degree level. Some community colleges, we're blessed here in California to have a lot of, free community college and excellent community college options. But even like when you go on from there to maybe a UC or a state school in our large system here, it's a barrier. And then if you're thinking of going on for a master's degree, whether it's an MFT, and then as you mentioned, they may do a licensure track, take a board exam. But in California, of all the states, is one of the states that's very, very tedious to get a license for counseling because we take it so seriously. We know the importance of mental health, and yet the system is not working very well, as you mentioned, for those who want to do this work. And then it's a very expensive place to live. I live in the most expensive city in the whole U.S., cost of living wise, which is the San Jose area here in Silicon Valley. And it's very prohibitive. But at the same time, we have high levels of stress. It's this, especially tech, workforce, which can be really brutal. You have a lot of, immigration or expats or whatever that work here. And so there's so much need for the therapy and not enough. So that context that you gave, I think, is so important because not everybody around the world may have those conditions, and they're always different everywhere. And honestly, it's a little sobering to even hear you talk about it because this didn't really happen by accident. So I guess that leads to the next question, which is, why does it matter? And for somebody who might be out there thinking, there's good clinicians everywhere, does it really matter if they look like their clients or act like them or have experiences like them? So what would you say to somebody like that?
I would say it does matter and it doesn't matter. So I can sit here and say, we will meet you where you are. Like my therapists, they meet their clients where they are. They are non-judgmental. We uphold, all the privacy and the confidentiality. We're working hard on establishing that therapeutic relationship. That's on us, not on the client. And when we're talking about our BIPOC populations, and those are our Black, Indigenous, people of color, right? They are traditionally left out of our healthcare systems. And like you said, they're experiencing more stressors and they have fewer resources. And so I think it is incumbent on us to do a little bit more to meet them where they are. And they don't necessarily always trust our system. They've had bad experiences. That's a fact, and because of that, we have to rebuild that trust. And so, for them, sometimes it means sitting in front of somebody who looks like them, sounds like them, even speaks their language. That's super important because I would say there's a difference between being fluent and being I'm bilang. I'm having my French word come to mind, but in bilingual, you can be fluent, but you can miss a lot of those cultural inferences that come along with being immersed in a language. And those are really important when you're doing therapy. For example, we were talking about Google Translate before we got on the call, and we serve a lot of Latinx. 45% of our clients identify as Latinx. So we translate a lot of our materials into Spanish. You can see our website. You can click and get it in Spanish. All of our paperwork is in Spanish. But I'm going to be honest, we used Google Translate to translate the documents. It's pretty efficient. And it wasn't until we had one of our intake workers who very nicely escalated. She says, this new paperwork that you translated, where you're asking people for their race, you're not using the right word for race. You're using the word race, like a race. So I'm like, oh, so now Liliana reviews everything before we press print or publish the documents.
Yeah, a case for the human in the loop.
Totally. Because I don't know, right? I'm not fluent even in Spanish, but it's really important for our families that they understand those papers that they're signing, because we give important information, and we want this to be a partnership. We want this to work, because what we know in therapy is that in order to get the good clinical outcomes that everybody wants, that here at YFC, we believe that everyone deserves access to so that they can live their lives to the fullest. But in order to get those good clinical outcomes, you have to be able to complete your treatment. And in order to complete your treatment, you have to be able to engage with your therapist, right? So you need to have a therapist who's pretty skilled, you're gonna have a relationship with, who you're gonna trust. And that means you probably need someone who's been at an organization for a while, because that retention, right? Sometimes it takes a long time. Well, in order for that to happen, to develop that trust and really bring the fruit of that relationship, you have to be able to get to your appointment, right? You have to be able to travel. You have to be able to afford it. You're talking about basic access things there. And I am going to put language at that basic access place. Here, where I live in Lake County, which is just north of Cook County, Chicago in Illinois, we have a lot of immigrants coming from Latin America. Oftentimes the children speak English, and it's no problem to place them with a therapist who's American. It speaks English. But then we miss communicating with the parents, and we know that our work will only be so good. It will only have that very limited impact unless we're able to also have an impact on the circumstances of that child's life, and that means their family. So if we can't engage the family, we're not going to have as good outcomes. So we want to engage the family. To do that, we have to be able to to talk with the parents. So now we're back to having bilingual counselors, even though the kids don't need it, the families do for their engagement. It's important.
It is important. I mean, you and I have had, stints of living abroad. I grew up bilingual and, had people in my life, mentors, teachers, neighbors, friends, all of them were speaking Spanish. My own family spoke English at home. And just from that experience alone, not to mention that I've lived in Indonesia for 10 years. I worked in Singapore 10 years and learned Malay during my time there. But anybody who's lived in a context or traveled in a context where you either needed help, anything from where's the bathroom? I can say that in way more languages than just
That's an important phrase.
Right. Yes. Like I'm not fluent in Thai. It's a very difficult language, although my in-laws are fluent in it. And I've, visited there many times and my husband grew up there. But it's like, yes, Hong Nam Ti Nai. We need to know where the bathroom is. If you have a need, though, that goes beyond just something simple like that requires, and as any of us who've learned other languages, we know that emotion in language is a next level of, so you can learn factual information in another language, but when you get to the point of depth around emotion, drawing back in experiences, and if you're having to translate that experience that you're having in your head that might be full of trauma, it might be very disjointed, it might involve your experience of, for example, walking from Venezuela through the Darien Gap to get to the United States and then getting to Chicago and then north of Chicago. I mean, that could be its own. I mean, you've probably seen people die, be assaulted, be all kinds. I mean, you've seen our system be very harsh to them in ways that are very inhumane and very concerning. And if you're having to explain something that's hard to put words to in your own language, but also translate that, it is such a barrier. So I think what you're describing is something a lot of leaders may know in a different way that have traveled or lived abroad, but a lot of us might feel it in our gut, but struggle to articulate to maybe, you mentioned you were in fundraising, to the funders or the boards. So let's talk a little bit about and push a little bit deeper onto the structural side of all this, because we kind of started there, how the system is somewhat broken. And so what has really prevented organizations like yours from fully being able to be, change the system and tackle this issue? Because I know you said YFC, it isn't the only one who's seen this gap by far. Right. So what's really getting in the way? What's the obstacle?
Money. I would say money and time. I have sat through so many county-led initiatives, and at the end of, they're wonderful, come up with wonderful plans. We have a great health department here in Lake County, but at the end of the day, there's no funding. And so the plans all go away. And I think when you're talking about changing the system, it's money. We need, and there's really cool work that's happening. Like, I'm really excited. But we need funding to come from policy. So that's going to come from our elected officials. We need them to advocate and create the policy. We need the insurance companies to step up and pay for the services that we're providing, and pay not below cost, which they've been doing for decades. So to give you an example, here in Illinois, it used to be, Medicaid would reimburse around $35 or $50 per session. Far below. Under our current governor, that rate has gone all the way up to $139 an hour for YFC, which is amazing. It's still below cost. My cost to deliver a counseling session is closer to $175. If I want to have the staff that I need, if I want to pay them not just a good wage, but a living wage, then that's not even going to keep people in the game. A living wage here in Lake County, Illinois, is $54,000 for a single adult. And I don't know how you pay rent on an apartment when rents around here, I can't find one less than $2,000 a month. How do you do that on $54,000 a year? And not to mention school loans, cars, all of that. So my costs are really high to provide the kind of service I provide. And it's only because we're a nonprofit that we're able to do this work. And which gets to another one of the system level issues. There are a bunch of therapists who are in private practice, but there's an abundance of them. And they're great. And they get around the issue of reimbursements by not taking insurance. So now we have a boutique cash business where that's what they need to do in order to make a living. But they can't do, again, they're catering to the people who have the resources, and we're leaving more people behind. At YFC, 40% of our budget's covered by philanthropy. So that's fundraising. That's foundation grants. That's individuals who are investing in our mission. And that's what allows us to do the amazing work we're doing to increase the access, to say yes when the client says, I want to use my insurance. No problem. We take all the insurances because it's mission focused for us. It's a losing, right? We're subsidizing that fee, but it's what works for you. And if you lose your job and have to go on our sliding fee scale, no problem. It's on at $5 a session. So it's only philanthropy that allows us to do those things. It's philanthropy that funds our salaries. It's philanthropy that provides me with the laptop that I'm using right now to do this. It's all of these things. So in order for the system to change, we need government. It's going to be a collaboration between government, business, nonprofits, and education systems too. We have to make the ability to get the licensure. If you're going to require the licensure, we have to make it more attainable. I'm going to say it. There are bills out there right now that are being debated to make it harder for students who want to become, right? They're limiting the amount of loans that we can take out by declassifying social work as a professional degree. That's going to hurt a workforce that is already not adequate. So you have all of these long time reasons that we have a not great workforce. And then you add COVID in there. And what happened in COVID is, remember, much of our workforce, second earners, white women with children. So when children all came home from school, we had to pivot and take care of our own families. And that burned a lot of people out. I saw most of my team, I've had complete staff turnover since COVID because they simply couldn't afford to work at YFC and take care of their families. I had one therapist who was doing telehealth, sitting on her toilet with the lid closed, in her powder room with the door closed and her kids screaming on the other side. That was the only space she had, the private space she had in her home. It didn't work for a lot of people, so they left. And now the workforce is even smaller. So in Illinois today, we have 24% of the workforce we need to address the need. And the need is going up. I don't think I have to explain that. I think we all see it. You just have to open the news. It's going up. Suicide's the second leading cause of death in our youth. That's not okay. So I could keep going.
No, it's just it's so multi-layered. I'm glad you mentioned the political side. We don't shy away from politics here. I mean, it's a part of the way systems change in any country around the world. So, it's always been one of those things where if someone says to me, I'm not political, I immediately question and get curious as to what is the privilege they're experiencing where they can say that, because I can say that about some things that maybe don't affect me or anyone I know. But a lot of what gets passed in terms of bills, both locally and nationally in anyone's country, affects people's lives in ways we don't often consider. And so our politics are really awful place that causes mental health struggles just to watch it unfold. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time, in a democracy, hoping we still are living in one, which is debatable, we do have the opportunity to speak into it. The power of a constituent is so important. Things do get changed when people call and speak with their representative or send emails. I've certainly done that even from overseas as a U.S. citizen. In Singapore, I always voted. I went to the U.S. Embassy to vote in 2016. I did not vote for the current president at that time, nor have I ever voted for him. And I also contacted representatives in the state where I was registered about the cabinet positions he was choosing, particularly for the Betsy DeVos position over education. And because even though I wasn't living in the States and didn't have kids in public school education, I know many who do, and now I live in the States and I have, right? And so I think that it's, to say that doesn't affect me is usually coming from a place where either I am uninformed about how it affects me and people I know, or I really am living in such a privileged situation where that's not going to be a game changer for me, whatever the vote is. But when it comes to mental health, I think we can make the case that no one's untouched at this point. We've seen the American Pediatrics Association come out a while back to say this is an epidemic of anxiety. See, if you know anyone in Gen Z, you are likely speaking with someone who's dealing with levels of anxiety that we've not seen before. And we can say, Silicon Valley is partly to blame. And yes, it's true. Instagram, all the things that are even I'm seeing in the news today around teenagers. So all of it is connected. And the moment we think it's just we can be an individual and vote or care about things in our society that just affect us, that's been one of the biggest, I think, myths of the American cultural experience is the lie that's been told that you can just be out for yourself and that you can somehow win and get ahead and have a happy life that way. It just never, ever really works out that way because we're all connected, whether it's the systems, the firefighters that we need to come help us if our, house gets caught on fire, or we need to call the police because somebody broke into our house. You need other people and you need systems. And so I really appreciate the honesty about even the money, which, no need to compare, but it's like even those numbers are just, we are much more expensive here on all of those things. And so we have a therapy shortage too. For all those reasons, it's very expensive for therapy. It's very hard. Even our Gen Z students to find therapists in our area because of all those things. So expensive, so many barriers. And so, but it would be easy to paint a picture for somebody of here's all the wins, because certainly there's many of those in therapy and in the world that you live in, but the barriers are so real. And so, I want to hear about the turn, the moment that YFC decided, to move anyway. So what have you been able to do at YFC? Walk us through what you've actually built, the recruitment, the retention, what's kind of working on the ground right now?
Well, it's not one thing, right? It's a whole bunch of things because that's, right, you're making a meal. There's so much, I think, leadership, it's relating to making a very nice meal. And I love food, so I like analogies that have to do with food. I'm lucky. I've been at YFC since 2000. I came, I didn't know anything about mental health, about the system. I simply was looking for a fundraising job that was half-time. They're not easy to find. And I found one here at YFC. So I came in 2000, loved it, had my 3 babies. And then when the executive director stepped down in 2009, I was so frustrated, and because I had been running up against walls trying to raise money, and I said, "Can I have the job?" I asked the board chair, "Can I have the job? Because here's what I would do." And she said, "Yes, sure, take it." And that was an incredible gift that I received, and I am so fortunate that I have been able to grow up with YFC. It's been this year, 2026, right? I'll be 26 years in September that I've been with YFC, and I have learned a lot. I've learned a lot about mental health care. I've learned about the system, and I've had the luxury, because I've been here for so long, of trying a bunch of different things. I think key to that has been my curiosity. And I think for me, that's the number one trait that I'm looking for in hires and my board members is curiosity. For me, talking about travel and living abroad, I was an exchange student. My mom was a high school French teacher, and I love talking. I love talking to people. And so I ended up doing every single little exchange I could. And then I took a gap year in between high school and college and did another, year-long exchange. Learned so much. And I think some of the things that I've learned is that there are reasons people are the way they are. And you just have to be curious about the history. A stereotype that we have here in the States around the French is they smell. It's really hard to get water up those old buildings. It's really expensive. There's a reason they don't take 20-minute showers every day. That's cultural, right? And so there's a reason behind it. So I only know that because I love taking really long showers, but my host families were like, you got to stop because it's too expensive. And I was like, I don't understand. Because I'm always going to say, I don't understand. Tell me more. And they explain why. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I get it. Right. And so I think the same thing is true here as I've learned more. Why is it that way? Why? Like, what can we do about it? And that started, I've been thinking about making YFC a good place to work to get the workforce I need since 2015. I've been working on that. Working on transportation's such an issue. So can we at YFC pick up and go to where the people are? I'm proud to say that now we started doing co-locations, but now we actually have 3 sites, our own space that we control in 3 distinct communities that are strategically placed across Lake County so that our clients don't have to travel far for treatment. Oftentimes, treatment is just a few minutes away. That's huge when you're talking about a commitment once a week over a period of several weeks, that you want to make that easy for that person to engage and continue their treatment. We very deliberately hire and train. We do so much training here. I'm proud of the work we're doing in training. We're growing therapists, or we're growing community health therapists. And that means we're looking at interns, and we're trying to always find those interns who are coming to us with lived experience. Because they might not have all of the skills and the grades, but they have something else. If they have a hunger, we can make it work. I can teach other things as long as there's a desire, a curiosity, a hunger, right, to do that. But some of the things you can't train lived experience. Like that you just have to have. I am so proud that today our staff at YFC reflects the diversity of our clients. And in there, 46% identify as Latinx, 81% are coming from low-income households. So that's really hard to flex our systems in order to exist. In a sense, we exist in a system. We don't have a lot of flexibility, but where we can, how can we flex? What can we do so that we can make it friendlier for the kind of people that we want to be in this work? I don't know that I have it all figured out. It's a work in progress, but it's money. It's manageable work. It's having supports right here in the office. It's having caring supervisors who have empathy, who are trained. It's always learning. It never ends. I'm sure there's more, but we'll figure it out as we go. We can only tackle so much at one time at the same time.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, there's no substitute for lived experience or curiosity, right? Of both of those. I mean, I was at a conference at Adobe, an AI Forum conference. Recently, there was a an executive at IBM and this thing that she said, and she had it on her slide, and it said, hire for heart because technology can be trained. I was like, yeah. I went up and spoke to her afterwards because I was like, yeah, why don't more people do that? Because even when it comes to technology, and I know that's a whole different industry, but it's certainly affecting the mental health field. And I've heard people who, speaking here, Stanford professors who are working on AI related tools to help within the therapy space. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are using AI in ways that aren't necessarily going to be helpful for them. So there's that whole conversation too. So it's not that it's separate, but I went up to her afterwards, this woman from IBM, and I just said, I don't see this happening very often. And we know that the technological skills are becoming obsolete very rapidly. Even people in college right now that are graduating with certain degrees, some of them are suddenly realizing that's not really a field that's going to really take them through even the next couple of years. And so if all you're doing is hiring for this technical expertise, when you don't hire for curiosity or character or some of these, what is often referred to as soft skills, but I think are some of the hardest work we do in any industry, not just mental health industry, but those are durable skills that build a foundation, that build trust. And if you're an organization that hasn't built trust with your talent right now, and you have scaled to a certain level, and there's no foundation of trust there or that psychological safety to iterate, make mistakes, learn from those, continue to learn. If you haven't cultivated that psychological safety and trust in your organization with how much change is happening in the world right now, you're at a big disadvantage. So I will never say those are soft skills because they are foundational, durable skills that stand the test of time. I wish more people hired for those, but we don't see it as much. And so thank you for mentioning that. I think it's really important and really inspiring, genuinely. I want our listeners to be able to take something concrete away from this. So, as we look ahead, what do you think? What still needs to be done? How can we involve, not just at YFC, but when you look at systems level, mental health, what has to change?
That's a good question. A lot has to change. We've come so far. When you think about, it was only in the 1960s that we deinstitutionalized mental health. We have come so far. And there is so much innovation and there's so much cool stuff going on. You talk about AI. I hope, and I want YFC to be a place where this happens. I hope we're going to use it to do better work. It's not going to do work for us, but it will give us the tools we need to really sing, right? And to really help our clients. I think you talk about politics. Politics, yes, they do matter. Voting matters. It decides how much money we get, and that decides so much. Talking about things is huge. Reducing the stigma. I think the stigma, we've gotten better, but it's still a barrier. It's such a barrier to people who want help but don't know where to go. And so in Janelle's dream world, there would be no wrong door. And anytime anybody, be it a manager, a neighbor, a friend, a family member, recognizes emotional distress, that we have the skills that we need to actually respond appropriately and send them to the right door. I see it not happening a lot. And so I think we need to work on our community, I'm going to say mental health literacy, because I think that that's something that it should be low-hanging fruit. Like, how do we know when you have a gaping wound that it needs stitches? We should have that same understanding about levels of care for behavioral health. So it's good. It's a complex issue. There's a lot the good news is there's a lot we can do. There's a lot of places where we can have progress. And I hope we see it in government, in business, in the workplace, with managers being empathetic and having manageable work, in parents who develop skills to regulate themselves so that they can then help their children. I think workplaces are going to be the new battlefield, though, for mental health. So there's a lot of work, a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. There's a lot of opportunity, and it's opportunity for us to even not just reach across the aisle in politics, but reach across our city to different communities, reach across different industries, because certainly even Silicon Valley Tech has well-being programs. And, this is where people get their medical insurance in their workplace. A lot of the world doesn't do that, but we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the best, but it is what we
It
do.
is what it
And
is.
it is what it is. And so whether we hopefully change that so everybody has access to this human right, or we try to fix what's really, really broken. But either way, I think that coming across industries, having these conversations is really helpful. So thank you for bringing your perspective from inside where you are. Workplace challenges are happening all across industries, across the country, across the globe right now because it's changing rapidly. But at the same time, all the more reason our mental health professionals need to be, equipped to help us. And all of us can all thrive when we have the resources we need to live the lives we want to live. So I am going to ask you to join our difference makers in a bit to go deeper with you on a question there on Patreon. But as we're finishing up here, I would love for you to give us where we can find you and more about your work and what you're doing.
So thanks, Lori. These are some of my favorite topics. And if your listeners would like to learn more or to read more about my ideas, what I talk about what works at YFC, what I'm working on, they should follow me on LinkedIn. So Janelle Miller Moravek on LinkedIn. And we're in the process of a new website that should be live later this spring. So at that point, counselingforall.org is also where you can find what we're going to call our new website and our behavioral health atlas tool, which will be a book of maps for the behavioral healthcare system that we are putting out there for the world so that we can accelerate recovery for everybody.
I love what you're doing to be so helpful to so many. It's so inspiring. We all need a little help sometimes. We don't get through this human life without needing some version of help. And so thank you for the great work you're doing. And difference makers, join us on Patreon for a further conversation with Janelle. Thanks for being here today, Janelle.
Thanks, Lori.
This conversation with Janelle has been such a rich and really necessary conversation. Janelle named things that a lot of people in this space feel, but don't always have the language or the courage to say out loud. It helps us see all the systems and how they intersect and help us to really understand the problem before we try to solve it. And the idea that our systems have been quietly selecting who gets to be a healer, and in doing so, quietly selecting who feels safe enough to even seek healing, that is something I don't want our listeners to move past too quickly as we sit in this for a second, difference makers. For everyone listening, if today's conversation stirred something in you, please share it. Send it to a colleague in healthcare, send it to your HR team, send it to your family, whoever in your organization makes decisions about hiring pipelines and workforce investment. This is one of those episodes that deserves a wider table. Politics, business, nonprofit, it all intersects here. And you can learn about the incredible work happening at YFC Youth and Family Counseling and find Janelle at the links in our show notes. And if this podcast has added value to your work or your life, the single most powerful thing you can do is actually leave us a review anywhere you listen to your podcast, or if you just want to head on over to aworldoffdifferencepodcast.com/reviews/new, you can do it there. It takes 2 minutes, and it really helps this show reach the leaders and difference makers, change makers who need to hear these conversations like this one with Janelle. Until next time, keep making a difference and know that the world is waiting for your voice. Thank you, difference makers, for being here. Not just for listening, for being the kind of person who shows up for conversations just like this one, because you believe the world gets better when we understand each other more. And that is who difference makers are. And you are one of them. There are 2 ways to go even deeper. On Patreon at patreon.com/aworldofdifference. For $7 a month, you get bonus conversations and community. $25 gets you into the room where the real talk happens, live every quarter with me directly. On Substack, paid subscribers get full essays, no paywall, and a monthly live conversation where I say the things I can't say anywhere else. Links to both of those are in the show notes, and I would love for you to join me in both of those places. If this episode stayed with you, share it with 5 people you know who need this right now. That is how we grow this. And that is how we grow ourselves at the same time. I am Lori Adams Brown. Until next time, difference makers, go keep making a difference.